It's the nature of
Here
how
we
this
go.
place works.
Here we are.
So back on March 15th, I introduced a letter about the labor negotiations with the West Coast folks in terms of having those done by July 1st. I understand they may have started yesterday. So last time there's been a dispute there, it ended up lasting 10 months, and it probably had more latitude in terms of how long you could go. I think that would be devastating for supply chain, everything else we've come through. I was hoping to get your opinion as to whether you think we'll get these negotiations done so that we don't, pass that July 1st deadline.
I'm sorry, which negotiations?
Okay, so it would be the upcoming contract negotiations for the West Coast ports. So it's a labor negotiation.
Okay. Sorry, I am not involved in that. So,
well, I think I'm raising the point in that, supply chain is
yes.
part of what you are concerned
yes.
with. That's been a major bottleneck on supply chain. And I and about 17, 18 other senators put it in a letter to President Biden and really have not heard back, although I am told that they may have started yesterday. So why don't you find out how they're going and to make sure that we don't pass the July 1st threshold, because that would add, when we're starting to get a little fluidity, back, I guess, from the frying pan into the fire. So I'll discuss something that we both share a concern with. My business was logistics, distribution. I know how supply chains have been really rattled, displaced. Main trading partner for many, the Chinese, have now done some things in their own country that look like they're going to be less dependable when it comes to how it's going to work on key things we get from them. Semiconductors, we know what that's done to many, many different industries. Those are issues I'm hoping that we're going to somewhat reflexively bounce back into something that's going to be more workable. I know you're working on some of the particulars. We've talked about it before, so I won't belabor that. I think what I'm concerned about mostly in our American economy, no one else seems to be, is the fact that the president put out a blueprint on a budget 10 years out that shows us actually growing our structural deficits, taking our debt from 30 trillion, where it is currently, record high in our country's existence, to 45 trillion. Love to know how you view that in terms of being a viable blueprint, and when do we have to start addressing the underlying causes, which are tough issues, Social Security, Medicare, that drive the structural deficits, or whether it makes a difference, whether we can have a blueprint for our country out there that says, hey, we're going to be 45 trillion. That's taking us into territory way exceeding where we were post-World War II.
So I can assure you that the president is concerned about fiscal responsibility. In fact, the deficit shrunk significantly this past year under his leadership, and he'll be the first to tell you that he is for responsible, efficient, run government. But we also think it's important to make investments, like the investments that we made in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, investments in broadband, investments in clean water, et cetera. So I think that, like all things, it is a balance, but I can tell you the president is committed to running a responsible government and fiscal responsibility.
Well, I know he said that. To me, the proof is in the practice and the pudding, so to speak. And pre-COVID, we were borrowing about 23% of every dollar we spend here marginally. Now that's up to 30%, and we created the largest deficits in our country's history, some in a bipartisan way, in trying to navigate through the pandemic. I'd be careful about touting that you're bringing the deficits down, because it's still huge deficits that we created. So the law of gravity would bring you down. What I'm more concerned about is putting a formal blueprint out there that averages between now and then, $1.5 trillion deficits times 10, 15 trillion added to our debt. I don't think it's a business plan that's sustainable. I think politicians, including Jay Powell at the Fed, through whatever this modern monetary theory is supposed to be, I think it runs us into the ditch in a hard way. And I would hope that there might be some modification to our country's business plan that does something other than that. And or do you like, or are you comfortable with a blueprint that shows us being 45 trillion in debt?
I am comfortable with the president's plans, but I agree with you that we have to continue to work to live within our means.
I guess we'll live with that today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Braun. I think Senator Moran is still coming back, and I have a few more questions. We still have 2 more votes.